and we need to make sure that this is not a climbing frame. Hi folks, today we are back on the garage conversion and we're going to be finishing our fascias and soffits. Will's up there now, he's having a bit of a sand, getting rid of all the render and stuff I spilt over the fascias when I was doing it. But my first job is to get some mesh. What we're going to be doing is venting our soffit. So I'm going to do a continuous mesh, insect mesh gap all the way along. Now to do that, I've bought some of this, which is stainless steel insect mesh tape. It should be enough to do this side, the other side, and also around our oak porch. So as you can see, it's just a really super fine mesh. Going to keep all the creepy crawlies out because we want to make sure that we've got that free flowing airflow over the top of our insulation. This is what we're going to be using. I probably shouldn't have done that. Let's coil that back up before we end up tangled. Hoping that we can just staple it in place. Remember, we've got boards going over the bottom of it anyway, so they'll be fixing it in place, but we'll tack it up with this. Okay, we've now installed that mesh up in there, so it needs to be tight against the front fascia. Doesn't really matter if it's not touching the wall, although it is for most of it, because our board is gonna, our soffit strip is gonna go up against that. And do wear gloves because it's like millions of little needles in there. Right, I'm gonna be using up some of this softwood cladding. I had a few strips left. It's tongue and groove, but we don't really need it. We'll be ripping that off anyway. But what I need to do now, because it's a little bit of variation from my rendering and just from the wall, we need to make sure that we kind of measure and cut. I can't really scribe it, but Will's going to shout down the measurements, then we'll rip it and then we'll put it up. Oh no, we'll paint it first, then we'll stick it up. Those fair-skinned redheads don't do well in this heat, and it is pretty hot out there. I went out yesterday and finished up painting about 9 PM and it was just about bearable. So the paint I'm using this time round is the Super Deck. Now this is one that I had mixed to order, just for a round number that we're using for the rest of the house. Remember when I did the roof and all that traditional, much more traditional orientated joinery up there, I used the linseed paint, which is a really traditional way to go, breathable. Hopefully going to give that, you know, a good 50-year lifespan up there. Down here, this stuff is fine, but probably needs a little bit more maintenance. It's a bit more sheltered down here. It acts more like a film, like a plastic film, which is not ideal if you're a bit of a purist, but equally it dries super quick and it's nice to work with. So if you can see it behind me, we've got the insect mesh in there now. We've painted the fascia board, and now we're just going to insert the little soffit strips which we've ripped down. So this is just some redwood cladding, which I've painted both sides, so I had one coat on either side. Once it's up, we'll paint it again. Alright, well, it's been another hot day, but I managed to get that done this morning, that painting, and getting the last little bits of the soffit fitted. The whole idea for this is basically to keep that continuous ventilation from each side of the building over the top of the insulation and the internal ceiling, just to make sure that the underside of our OSB deck is constantly dry. We don't want any build-up of condensation or moisture under there, and by having that free-flowing vent, it's the way to do it. So this is our 10mm soffit board which we've painted, and you can see there that's the stainless steel mesh, and then we've got our fascia on the front here. So hopefully that continuous 15mm gap all the way along will give plenty of ventilation all the way across. And now the important thing is that we do the same thing on the other side of the building. Because if you don't do that, there's not much point in doing this side. It's got to be able to kind of flow across that airflow and have a constant draft. And if you have an abutment against a wall, let's say it's just a lean-to that you've built, and you have to, there's no other way around it, and you have to have the joist coming away from the wall, then you really need to be able to get an air vent there somehow. So the best way to do that is to actually buy the, I can't remember what they're called, an abutment strip or something like that. And it's a vented strip which will allow air to get up probably under the flashing, I think it is. But I've seen lots of diagrams on the design of that, and if you search it on Google, I think a load of architect kind of shots come up, and that just explains the product you can use and how you can still get that cross ventilation even if it's abutting a wall. Obviously the ideal situation is to go for a warm roof, but that's not always possible, especially if you've got height restrictions, or perhaps it's an existing building and you're not touching the upper deck and you're kind of refurbishing from underneath. Now, dare I say it, we're not far off finishing this building now. If you remember way back when, this was just a mishmash of blockwork and brickwork from kind of 70 years ago, an asbestos roof on it, and jail windows. It kind of had bars and all sorts going on. We've done it over the years, and we've finally got to the point now where we've got a really nice usable space in here, even though the rabbits are taking refuge in there for now. They're out loose. It's the coolest place for them in the evening. Anyway, Joe's got a nice big window there into the studio space, a new external door that we put here, and then the utility bit that's up there and the downstairs bathroom. So it's added another 3 or 4 rooms to the house, and a much needed sort of utility and laundry room space away to take the pressure off the main house. And then finally, where we've put in this additional door out onto the deck, I'm just kind of working a temporary solution here. The end game really is to have an extension off the back of the house, but for now I really wanted to insulate this last little stretch of wall, so I'm just going to be cladding this, so some membrane and counterbattening to get done there, and I'm going to call it a day. And we need to make sure that this is not a climbing frame. No, no, no. There are lots of ways of venting a soffit. You can get the little circular vents that you just drill out a hole, but you have to do that on every joist really, unless you've got counterbattening or something on top. Or of course you can have a continuous vent strip in a soffit, a UPVC soffit, and in which case they already have the little strip in there, or little vents. So that is a good option, but of course if you want a custom colour, which we've gone down that path because we started with it, we've got to carry on with it, and by wanting to paint timber, and if you're using timber, then that's why you need the mesh stuff. There's one last way, and I'll show you that now. If I can remember where they are. Yeah. Now when I started work on the roof over the winter, this is the route I was going to go. It's more for a pitch roof, but this is another form of ventilation, and by installing this you tile over, and it's a hidden way of getting airflow under that way. So there may be a way of using something like this in your application if it's not a flat roof and it's more of a pitch roof, and hopefully your bugs aren't going to get in, or not big bugs at least. And now I've got 30 meters of this stuff to sell. Any thoughts, George? No final words from the rabbit. If you want to see the full garage renovation, garage conversion playlist, then I'll leave a link to that at the end of this video. You can watch the whole process, and at some point I will do a start to finish on it, but it's 5 years of footage and I haven't got time for that right now. But I'll get to it one day. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.